What's up, Wrestling World? This is Andy Perez with 411mania.com, and you are watching Dissecting Dynamite. And even though the country is divided, have no fear, because this Saturday is AEW Full Gear. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you comment in the chat what you thought about tonight's go-home show. That's also my first question for our wonderful guest tonight. You know him as a frequent contributor at 411mania.com, as well as the host of the 411 On Wrestling podcast, and might I add, the first repeat guest here at Dissecting Dynamite, Mr. Blake Lovell. Blake, how you doing today?
Andy, doing well, my friend. And as I told everyone in my AEW Dark review this week, I hope everyone listened to my call. And that, of course, was 3 words. Vote John Silver.
Vote John Silver. And it seems like people did go to the AEW polls and they voted because John Silver is on the main card at Full Gear. John Silver versus Orange Cassidy. It's sure to be an epic face-off. But before we get ahead of ourselves, in a general basis, what did you think about tonight's episode of Dynamite?
I think we went in, and I heard a lot of people say, trying to compare it to NXT and all that, as we always do. But it was like, maybe this card doesn't have sort of anything that just jumps out at you and just says, this is just going to be this huge thing. But I actually found that it was a pretty fun show from start to finish, which, again, that's nothing unusual, right? I mean, you're going to get some variety, you're going to get some excitement, but I thought it was better than I thought it would be. I guess that's
most definitely not a lot of major draws on the headlines going into today's episode of Dynamite, but it's still I'd say it still paid off overall. Whether or not it was a big enough show to be the go home show into Full Gear, we'll find out as we continue reviewing, and continue reviewing we will. The show started off with a little backstage promo with Chris Jericho putting over Jake Hager's war in Bellator, a war that I must admit that I did not watch. But looking at Jake Hager's face, it doesn't look like he won that fight. He was torn up.
He was, he took a bit of a, what did Jericho say? He talked about the stitches. He said there was a lot of stitches. I want to say it was in the double digits maybe with that. But hey, at least that's what you want, right? If you have this big, tough stable and everything, you want a guy in there that looks like that. Like you obviously want someone that looks like Jake Hager in the first place, but you really want someone who looks like Jake Hager when he's gotten punched about 15 times. Like that's what you really want, and that shows the intimidation factor. That's all.
Oh yeah, but unfortunately, Jake Hager and his 15 stitches were interrupted by MJF and Wardlow. MJF cutting them off, and Chris Jericho saying that he thinks MJF is a bit too soft for the inner circle. I don't know about you, but I saw MJF versus Jon Moxley, and MJF, while maybe a bit entitled, is anything but soft, and MJF was looking to prove that in the matchup. But what were your thoughts on this promo that opened the show?
Yeah, I thought it was good because we talk about, like, with AEW Dynamite, one of the things they do a good job of is, like, you get right into something. Like, and I think that's one of the things you can say about it is it seems like they always do a good job of, like, throwing you right into something right away, whether it's a match, whether it's a promo segment like that. Like, we remember back to that first interaction between Jericho and MJF, where you've got, kind of like the split screen after they come together and all that. That's what I like about it is, maybe not every single promo is going to be something that just wows you or puts you over the top, but I just like that you get into something as soon as you go from that opening video and you go right into the show, you've got something going on. And I think that's something that always, to me, like, it catches me. It's like, all right, well, I'm hooked right away. And then for this, it furthered that unpredictability, because I'll tell you, Andy, and I know we'll talk more about this, but I don't know what direction they're going to go in with this. And that's why I enjoyed the storyline, because I just think it's very unpredictable what they're going to do.
Most definitely. And before we move on to talk about this match, we have Jonas back in the live chat this week. And he's saying, he's asking rather, is John Silver getting on the main card the most benefit somebody's gotten from BTE, from being the Elite? And John Silver, not only is he hilarious on Dynamite, not only is he hilarious on Dark, but he has become a star player on being the elite, and he's become a fan favorite in part because of that. But yeah, we'll talk more about John Silver later tonight once we get to the main event. But our first match of the evening was Ortiz and Sammy Guevara versus MJF and Wardlow. What did you think about this opening bout?
I mean, I thought it was a hot start because you had that transition too, where you came straight from the promo and you went straight into what you had there with this match. And I thought what was interesting to me was, it's like you could see Sammy Guevara, you can see like that future
Right.
face like guy, like instead of just being that sort of. And it's funny because you remember back like Jericho and all his interviews has talked about, when he first found Sammy Guevara, he's like, I just want to punch this guy in the face because he just had this look and he was just this swarmy, like arrogant, but like you see that side of him, and at the same time, you look at this match and you're like, well, I mean, given what he can do in the ring, people will have no choice but to cheer him eventually, right? So, and you saw some of that here because you had that dynamic where both these teams, factions, whatever, are heels, right? So I mean, somebody had to kind of play that role, and it was him because he got all this offense going. You saw all the corkscrew stuff that he hit, and then he had all this momentum, and I think that's to me stood out about, okay, maybe not necessarily just in this match or maybe what's next, but like you see that Sammy Guevara has that it factor to where he could be that arrogant prick, or he can be this guy that has such good offense and all these flashy things he can do and just his facial expressions. He can be someone that you have no choice but to cheer. And that's why I'm very fascinated to see what his role is going to be in this whole story here with Jericho, MJF, the Inner Circle. We've already seen a little bit, but I'm very fascinated to see which side maybe he lands on, because we already know where he's at now. But that to me is one of the more interesting
Most
aspects.
definitely. Sammy was also the standout for me of this match. Just very, very crisp offense, amazing looking knees, amazing looking kicks. And then, of course, the undeniable talent that he has when it comes to high flying. But Wardlow also showing off a bit in this match. His strength is always an impressive feat to witness. Blocking a kick from Ortiz, getting a really nasty looking spine buster in there. But this match overall, like a few of the openings that we've had since Dissecting Dynamite started, just showing off some of the future of the company. And Sammy Guevara is certainly going to be a force to be reckoned with. How his story is going to play in with the Jericho MJF story, that remains to be seen. But we had a bit of a taste with Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara during this match. Matt Hardy disguised, pulling off the mask and getting a gnarly looking chair shot in on Sammy Guevara. We've roasted Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara a little bit on this podcast, or a little bit on this show in the past, but what are we thinking moving into this match, this elite deletion at Full Gear, and this also wasn't the last time that we're going to see Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara tonight, by the way.
Yeah, you're right. And I think at least, when we talked about when they announced this again, you and I were both like, oh man, like, oh boy, I don't know if I want to see this again. Like, I just don't.
My
After
eyes
what we
went
saw,
so far into the back of my head, I
previous.
might as well have been the Undertaker.
Well, listen, we have video evidence of that too, because that was right after we started the show, right? So you can look back if you think he's lying, he's not. But I think because they're doing this elite deletion thing, and it's at the compound and all this other stuff, that's good. I don't want to see them in an actual wrestling match, like we said. There's just too many undone. Like even when Matt picked up the chair here and he threw it at Sammy, as soon as he had the chair, I'm like, oh God, please don't, please don't hit him in the face. Like, don't just like bust him open. I'm just like, please don't. And so that was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, if he throws this chair at him, and all of a sudden Sammy turns around and he's got like a split in his forehead, I'm like, just cancel everything.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
just cancel it all. So
And that wasn't the only storyline that progressed throughout this match. We had a bit of contention between MJF and Wardlow shown throughout the match. MJF almost running into Wardlow's knee, and showing a bit of scorn there. This story continues progressing where it's shown that it's strictly a work relationship between MJF and Wardlow, but there's going to be a time where Wardlow snaps. Do you think that's within the near future, or do you think this feud's going to keep on building throughout the year? Because this has been an established team and an established rift between them for quite a while now.
See, and I think that's one of the things we forget about with this whole MJF Jericho Inner Circle thing. Is like, well,
Mm-hmm.
Wardlow's there too, and like, where does he fall on this? Like, what is his role in this whole thing? Because look, we have to admit too, Andy. I mean, we've seen Wardlow in the tournament, and it's clear, like they see this guy as another one of those. We talk about Sammy, we talk about Jungle Boy, MJF, but like Wardlow's in that same category as clearly as guys they see as he's good in the ring. He's got the look. His skills will get better in other areas, but we've seen something with him. And I mean, I thought the match, he had against Hangman Page was good. I mean, the match he had, against Jungle Boy, like he's pretty good. And so I wonder what that looks like, because that's what I love about this thing with Jericho and MJF is think about it's not just like having two guys, right? It's having like multiple guys because you have to, okay, well, where's Guevara going to go? Where's Santana? Where's Ortiz? Where's Hager? Where's Wardlow? Like we have to figure out these potential story points for all these different guys, not just Jericho and MJF. Like we've got all these other guys to figure out too. And so it makes it a lot more exciting is because, that adds the extra layer of unpredictability, I guess, to
Most
the whole
definitely.
thing.
And Jonas pointing out in the chat, even a couple weeks ago, with MJF calling out Wardlow saying, "If you win this title tournament, if you win this title, it's my belt."
Right.
So let us know in the chat, where do you guys see this Wardlow versus MJF situation going into the near future? But MJF victorious this night. He ends the match with his what do they call his armbar? It's a Fujiwara armbar, but with Salt of the
Yeah.
Earth. Is that the,
I Yeah, that's like he's see that's another thing too. I want to point that out. It's like this guy, the fact that he has like that kind of skill set, like where he does these submission moves, like when he just gets pissed off to the point, it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna
Mhm.
break your arm. Like he's not just the cocky like young guy, right? He's just the guy that he may be cocky and young for a second, but then he's like, I'm gonna snap into this like just complete psycho and try to break your arm off. So that's kind of like Ricky Starks. Like he does the same thing, and like they're not the same, but they're kind of similar
Yeah,
in that.
yeah,
So
very similar gears and nozzles throughout the construction of both of those superstars. There, I'm sorry, did I say superstars instead of wrestlers? My mindset's in the wrong company, obviously.
come on, they're pro wrestlers, Andy.
I'm
Pro wrestlers is
I'm
what they
sorry. I'm
are.
sorry. My head's still stuck on Monday because that show just seemed to go on forever and ever. I might as well still be watching it. But MJF, not only with that armbar showing that he is not soft, but tackling Jericho over by the announce table after the show, causing some sound difficulties that persisted throughout the show a little bit, but showing Jericho that he means business. And what was initially a friendly spar to see if MJF would join the inner circle now has a bit of heat behind it. How did you see this development of the story? Did you expect MJF to make this slight turn here? And what are your thoughts going into Full Gear MJF versus Jericho?
Yeah, I didn't expect this right after the match. I thought maybe showing the toughness was just going to be during the match, but then to have that afterward, like, I was very smart. I thought it was a very smart move because how else, if you're MJF, it's like, okay, well, this guy wants me to show toughness. Well, I'm just going to go over there and knock him out of his seat. That'll show him
Mm-hmm.
something, right? So I feel like that added that extra, storyline there. And now going in, I tell you, which, you and I will talk more about this on the podcast we're going to do on 411 on wrestling. And I'm going to hopefully have some more sorted thoughts on that because I'm almost like one of those where you have like the board where you've got all the pins and it's like trying to figure out, okay,
Connecting
where's
the
this going to
dots,
go?
yeah.
Where's this going to go? Yes, you're like, okay, where's this and this? I don't know. And that's what I love about it is like, I could see this, well, you could point out, okay, is the inner circle going to turn on Jericho? I just don't know. Like there are so many ways I think you could go with this. You could have kind of the split where maybe some of these guys are like, okay, well, I've seen what I've seen from MJF. I'm going to go join him. And you've got some of the guys on the other side. And then all of a sudden, you've almost got this, like, they're ready for war. Like these two sides are ready to go at it. So there's lots of different ways it could go. And honestly, I think we're going to say that's going to be the common theme we're going to talk about probably heading into Full Gear is I don't know how some of this stuff's going to turn out, but I think that's such a good thing because a lot of these storylines, they've been built up to the point where I don't know what's going to happen. And that's why I love being a wrestling fan. It's because I want that unpredictability. And, Eric Bischoff's always someone that talked about that, like during the Nitro era and everything. It's like, he wanted unpredictability, and you know what? I agree. Like that's what you want sometimes.
And here we have some unpredictability that thankfully doesn't seem contrived. It seems like it's just the natural flow of the story. We have Kenneth Price back in the chat saying, "This is one of the best Dynamites they have done in the COVID era." That's high praise because we have had some amazing shows throughout this pandemic. So to say it's one of the best, obviously it's being well received out in the wrestling world. But that leads us into the next segment of the night. We had a promo. We had Tony Schiavone with Kenny Omega and Kenny Omega's home. I can't call it a home. His current residence. What did you think of this sit down interview with Kenny Omega leading into his big bout with Adam Page?
All right. Well, as a dog guy, all right, Kenny brings the dog in. He brings the dog in, and he's like, he's like starting to warm up to it. And he's like, you know what? This isn't even my dog. Like that I just laughed out loud with that because I thought it was hilarious because it's like this guy is so obnoxious. It's like, oh, I'm going to bring this dog in. I'm going to be in this place. But you know what? They're not even mine. Like, I don't care. I'm just here trying to show off. And I thought that was hilarious. And that added that extra touch, with his character. And I thought it was good because it stayed on that same lane to what we've seen the past several weeks now, which made, I think, the stuff that we'll talk about later in the show with the Young Bucks, I thought it was a little bit different than maybe what we've seen. But I understand why they did it because you want to tie together, FTR, Young Bucks, and then Omega and Page. But like I said, I know we'll get to that. But this was just, I just thought it was it was just another added layer to Kenny Omega, this new guy who's just, he knows he's better than everyone. He knows he's going to go out and beat Page. And that was pretty much what it was all about. And just the setting of this whole thing, like that's what made it. It wasn't even what he said. It was just the setting and him saying, you know what, I'm going to do this promo here because that's me.
And that's the thing, like Kenny showing major confidence, major arrogance, but never getting like super duper cartoonish during this during this sit down interview. It almost makes you dislike him even more because it grounds the stuff that you've been seeing over the past few weeks. You see these huge, amazing, elaborate entrances with 10 minutes of introduction from Justin Roberts. And here you see Kenny and he truly believes what he's saying. And that reality, that grounding, combined with this super elaborate presentation, it shows that he feels like he's worth all of this. This is the attention that he should have been getting this entire past year, but he was too bogged down with Hangman Adam Page. And once again, I'm not speaking for myself. I love Hangman, but from Kenny's perspective, now that he's free, not only does he get to flaunt his in-ring talents, he gets to flaunt his temporary residence. He gets to flaunt his fake dog. He gets to do whatever he wants. So leading into this tournament, Kenny Omega says, look at my past in the tournaments. Look at me in the G1. I can do this all day, any day. And who would bet against Kenny Omega? That was the question that we were left with at the end of this promo. Who would bet against Kenny Omega? I certainly wouldn't.
Well, I'm not because as we talked about when I did the 411, the preview and predictions, he was the person I picked to win. And I think it's just because it's hard to bet against him, especially if they're going this direction. But again, like you said, though, I mean, there's a lot of ways they could go with this match at Full Gear. And one of the things you brought up that I thought was a really good point is, what is it? They always say the best antagonists are the one that 100% believe in what they're saying, and they 100% believe that what they're doing is the right thing. Like, and they don't really see it, from anyone else's perspective, but they truly believe in their mind that what they're doing is something that everyone agrees with or something that everyone just is completely on board with. And I think you're seeing him move so much towards that. And that's what you've got to do, because if you're completely changing his character, he 100% believes in what he's saying. He 100% believes that he can back up anything that he says. And that's why I think makes him such this great, antagonist now heading into this match, knowing that it's hard to hate the guy just because of how good he is. But there's going to be a lot of people, wanting to see Hangman Page win this. And I just, that they're so good together. And this character, I think, just fits so perfectly with what they're trying to do.
And you guys viewing, make sure you let us know in the chat, what do you think of this current incarnation of Kenny Omega's character? And while you're down there in the chat, why don't you give us a like and give us a subscribe as well. As we go into our second match of the night, we had Miro, formerly known as Rusev, going one-on-one with Trent. And not only did we have the embedded storyline of Trent, he broke the arcade game with his head. Not only did he break the arcade game, but we had on commentary saying that Miro was apparently Trent's young boy when they were both down in developmental together at WWE. So these two competitors know each other. They know each other's moveset. They have rode together. And now they're going one-on-one. What did you think of Miro's showing tonight?
I'd tell you, there was two things that stood out to me, and that was, I think Trent is such an underrated wrestler.
Definitely.
Like, because we see him so much, I think, in the tag team. I think as a singles wrestler, not a lot of people probably, think of that, but I think that's also something with AEW where even though some of these guys are in tag teams, like when they actually have singles matches, like they're very good. And I think he's one of those that probably doesn't get enough credit because he can have a good match with pretty much anyone. And I mean, we've seen that with some of the matches he's had, without Chuck Taylor or without Cassidy, either in non-tag team or trios, whatever. He's just really good. And I thought this was the kind of match where, he's got a different opponent where it's a guy that has the strength, the size, all the stuff, and Miro. And that was my other point was I think this is a solid starting point for Miro. But at the same time, Andy, we know, like, people want to see, like, I think they want to see more Rusev. Like, they want to see more of this guy that we know, like, the background with, the gaming and everything. And we know what they're doing with Kip Sabian. I think this is, like, that starting point for him. And that's something I would keep in mind is if, because I know there are some people that are kind of frustrated with, like, okay, well, maybe the Kip thing isn't necessarily working for him. But I think this is that starting point because we know, right, eventually he's going to destroy Kip Sabian. Like, it's going to happen at some point. We just don't know when that's going to be. But maybe that's part of it, right? Is because we know, like, Miro is not going to be in a tag team with Kip Sabian for the next 5 years. Like, we know at some point he's going to destroy him. And maybe that's one of the things is maybe it's, after the wedding or however they do all this. But I think people just want to say, all right, he goes from this, and this is not to knock Trent or anything, but he goes from maybe starting where he's at now to eventually being, Brian Cage or Lance Archer or guys like that who are, going after Moxley or whoever the champion is. I think there are people that want to see that because we remember back, and that was the big thing, right, with him in WWE was he felt so underutilized because of his talent. And you feel like he never sort of got to the level people wanted him to get to. I think if you're someone now who believes that with AEW, I think you just kind of have to be a little bit patient because he is new to the company and they just have so many guys. But I think this was a great match, and I think you see those two individually, like I said, with Trent and with Miro. I just think you kind of see what's possible for both of them. And with Miro especially, he'll get to that point to where he's like a top guy, I think, in AEW, even if it's just not in the short term.
Most definitely. And we saw flashes of that monster that a lot of people are clamoring for when it comes to Miro here. He looked like a beast in areas of this match. Catching Trent in the midst of a swinging DDT, not once but twice in this match, showing some really, really stiff-looking suplexes. And throughout the match, I thought Miro looked like $1,000,000, as did Trent, as you were saying. But I'm still like you're saying, I'm still not getting the satisfaction of character that I want out of Miro right now. But it's just a matter of waiting. It's just a matter of patience because we are seeing that intensity in Miro still, regardless of character. And I have no issue with the whole Twitch element of his character as long as they're able to successfully integrate it throughout the show. And it seems like they're doing so so far. And we have Jonas down in the chat saying that that he has bad memories of the Big Papa Pump era Steiner. I don't know if that's in relation to Miro, because I'm not really getting that I'm not really getting that connection. Maybe he's speaking of like a disconnect with the crowd, but even then, I'm not quite picking up on what you're saying. So Jonas, let us know exactly what you mean with the Big Papa Pump comparison. But in the end, Miro catches Trent with a game over kick, locks in that camel clutch, and Trent was done for. But this war between the two of them wasn't quite done for, because we had some follow through after the match with Orange Cassidy coming out and showing Miro exactly what's what.
Yeah, we did, and I just think the interactions, of course, with Dark Order and Orange Cassidy, and just with everything, and that's something else too. I think we see so much in AEW now, and we we'll talk about more of it later because we have some more of that too to discuss. But they just tie. It's not like one segment isn't dedicated to one thing like all the time. Like some stuff deserves to be like the Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston stuff. Like you're not running out 3 or 4 different storylines in one segment there. But some of the stuff you can just tie in so well with everything else that's going on, because all these guys have a history. They all have a background with each other. We've seen these guys go up against each other before, so you can find different ways to tie everything into the same segment, and that way you can push. Knowing that, and I think that leads back to, like we talk about Miro, like it's a holding pattern right now because like they can't push everyone. Like they can't put everyone in the top storyline. It's just not possible. And so it's almost like a holding pattern. And that's where we talk about, like, you can only get so many people on television for a 2-hour show. And that's why I think their ability to kind of tie everything into, like, do it in multiple segments or tying things in to the same segment where you have different storylines kind of intercrossing. I think that's a smart move just because that's probably the only way they can get it all in. So
Exactly. And we saw that. This is not the first time tonight that we saw that going on. We had like Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy in the first match. We have both the Dark Circle and OC, which I guess those are interconnected with Johnny Hungy up there. But nonetheless, we have Mr. Steve Cook in the chat this week, our guest host from last week, saying that he has the same Inner Circle shirt. It's a sad purchase. Them losing the Stadium Stampede, but the best $12.50 I've ever spent, bar none. But that leads us into... Oh, okay. Before we go into the next segment, I want to ask, what is Miro's problem with Sue?
Well, listen, that's the ultimate showdown, right? Is Miro versus Sue. Like, I feel like that's the money match there. It's got to be.
See, I think it's time for a cross-promotional event, because I think that is the money match, and I think it should be Miro versus Sue, main event of WrestleMania.
Well, for control of the van, how about that? Like, the winner gets the van. Can you imagine, like, Miro driving around, putting the arcade in the van, and you've got Kip riding shotgun, and you got Penelope in the back just shaking her head at these two. I don't know. Miro and Kip, like a road trip, almost like a buddy cop movie. I feel like that's the next step here. So
I'm on board. As long as it's a good buddy road trip movie, I'm good for it. But that leads us into the next segment of the night. We had JR sitting down with Hangman Page in a very, very interesting sit down interview. What did you think of the progression of Hangman's character with this one?
Yeah, I thought this was great because it's something people have talked about, like on social media and stuff. Like when you're trying to pick apart this Hangman thing, and you're like, all right, well, this guy's always got a drink. He's always got this going on. He's never, like, even the graphic they did? I don't remember if it was last week or maybe the week before, where it was like emotionally unavailable during his entrance. Like, it's just like that was the one they put on there for his entrance, of course. So that's another thing I love that AEW does, just these random facts and thoughts they put on these guys' entrance displays or whatever. But I thought it was good because you had that point to where it's like, okay, he doesn't know what he's going to do. If he doesn't win this match, like, and eventually become the champion, like, what else does he have? And he picks up the drink. He's like, this is all I have. And so, like, it's much different, right, than what we're going to see from Eddie Kingston. Like, it's a completely different type of thing because Eddie Kingston, which we'll talk about in a second, like, he is absolutely needs this. Like, he has to have it. But it's like Hangman does too, but in a much different way. Like, because he doesn't feel like he has anything else. Like, he's just like, he doesn't have his best friend, right? Kenny, like his tag team partner, not there. He doesn't know, we don't know anything going on with the Young Bucks, which we will later on in the show, but it's like he feels like that he has nothing left. And he remembers back to having that shot, having the shot right when AEW, the first world champion, like he had that chance, but he couldn't get it done. And so now it's like, this is my only last chance. Like, I have to do this because I don't have anything else. And I felt like he really did a good job portraying that. And that's something too, Andy, I think back to when, like, what his character was. You and I, we've talked about other people, like how far their characters come, like Dark Order and all that. But Hangman Page, when he first started AEW, like to where he is now, it is night and day because, like, I could actually look and say, I would love to see this guy win the title because it would be just a complete journey because you wouldn't know what was going to happen. But he's just done such a good job, I think.
I completely agree. At the beginning of this entire AEW project, people were questioning whether or not Hangman belonged in the main event with Chris Jericho for that first title shot. People were saying he was straight up vanilla. He was vanilla ice cream. Well, you know what? He's turned from vanilla ice cream to handcrafted bourbon flavored ice cream now, and it is delicious to watch. I'll tell you that. JR burrowing into poor Hangman's soul during this interview. Oh my gosh, he saw right through Hangman's drunken stupor, and he called him out. He said, "You know what? I can't do a good JR impression, but I'm going to try. You know, I'm not even good. It's not Halloween. I'm not wearing a JR hat, but saying that he thought Hangman was nervous, and Hangman, surprisingly for me, agreed.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you added that to it, and it's like, well, I don't. What else do I have? And it's like, well, you know what? Maybe I am nervous. Like maybe I am kind of hesitant going into this, and I think that's another potential direction here, right? Like, what if we go into this match thinking one thing about Kenny Omega and like what we think we're going to see here, but what if we just see Hangman like just completely snap and become this guy that just all of a sudden, takes it to a different level? I could see that too. No, I don't. Like I said, I think this is probably going to be more about both of these guys maybe kind of intersecting with that same thought to where like they're both about to snap on each other, and then what happens from there, because we know there's all this tension. We know, Kenny Omega could get frustrated with Hangman, in terms of, okay, I feel like I should have beaten this guy 5 minutes ago. And I mean, it's like for Hangman, it's like, okay, well, this guy's really trying to kill me. Like he's trying to destroy me. This was my best friend and all this other stuff. So I'm so ready for this match. Like, I just think it's going to be fantastic.
Such an interesting dynamic between the two characters. And like you said, so many layers that they can play with, so many directions that they can go. And they're going to continue going in a certain direction later tonight after the Young Bucks and Private Party match. But we'll get to that when we get to that. After this, we had a little hype package displaying what we should be looking forward to with FTR versus the Young Bucks. And I don't know about you, but this whole package seemed a bit awkward to me. Let us know in the chat, what did you guys think of this promo package, and what do you think of FTR versus the Young Bucks leading into Full Gear? Let us know in the chat, as well as like and subscribe. But what did you think of this hype package with FTR versus the Young Bucks?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before, but I just think it's just been all over the place. Like, I think that's the best way to put it. Is like one week you think they're going in some direction, another week they go in another, but it's not like that unpredictability thing. It's just like, I'm not really sure why they took this turn or that turn or where this is actually going. And look, they've said it themselves. Like, you see the interviews and the stuff, and everyone's talked about it. Like, we feel like the build could have been better for this. It feels like even the match that's been built up so much over the years on social media and everything, and being the elite, it just felt like almost you wanted it to be like drag it out a little bit more to kind of add something else, like a little bit more. What's JR always says, a little bit more sizzle, like give it a little more sizzle. Because we know the match is going to be great, right? We know they're going to have a good wrestling match. But do they have the story element that Omega and Page do? Do they have the story element that even Jericho and MJF do at this point? Do they have Moxley Kingston? Like, that's the thing, is I don't think their story matches up with
No,
any of
not at
those.
all.
And so, and that's like, people have also talked about, could this match be the main event? Honestly, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I hope not, because I just don't think that the story has been built to where it deserves to be the main event on the show, because I think this is one of the best cards they've ever had, like, period. I think this is, from top to bottom, one of the best AEW pay-per-view cards ever. Like, and I know that's not a large sample size, but it is. Like, and so I just don't think it has that level of, it does have the level of interest, but I don't know that it has the level of consistency, continuity with the story that some of these others have. Maybe that's the best
That's
way.
the thing. It just doesn't have that emotional resonance that the rest of the
Yeah.
stories on the card do. And we have Jonas in the chat echoing that sentiment that you showed. He also feels that the story has been a bit rushed, and he thinks that that the actual hype package that we saw, where it was kind of put together a bit clunky. He noticed some weird cuts. I don't know if I noticed the same that same issue with the
Yeah.
overall production of it. And Jonas is also in there talking about the stipulation, just asking, does it spoil the tag match? Are they going to go in the direction of TNT tag titles, something of that nature? They certainly have a stacked enough tag division, but
Yeah.
the shows and the cards for Dynamite often already seem very, very packed. I don't know, and some of the current titles that they have, cough cough, the AEW Women's title, already don't get enough exposure on the card. So I'm not sure about the direction with the secondary tag titles there. I just don't see it. But yeah, this stipulation has me a bit puzzled too. And we can talk about that in more detail as we move into the Young Bucks match later tonight. But before then, we had a promo being cut by Team Taz, and before we even get to that, I just need to say I am fully on board the Ricky Starks train.
Yes.
He is. I mean, when you can match up with a promo against Taz, when you can stand in the same ring and follow up Taz's promo with your own and arguably do it better, arguably steal the show, that speaks for itself. But to do it looking as damn slick as Ricky Starks looked tonight with the with the spectacles and the turtleneck, I just couldn't handle myself. He just exudes cool and he exudes awesomeness. But the point of this was basically saying, why the heck are we not on the Full Gear card? Ricky Starks is 10 for 11 in matches. Brian Cage is practically undefeated. What are we doing being left off the card? What did you think of this promo, and what did you think of their justification for it?
Once again, the antagonists are 100% right. Like, they have, like, you can't point out anything that they're wrong about, because that's the thing too, is people have talked about this whole rankings thing with AEW, and it's like, well, one week maybe it means something, the next week it doesn't. And I think we're seeing like they're getting further and further away from the rankings, and maybe some of the things that's a little. And I know people pointed out, you look at like the World Championship rankings. Well, Moxley's beaten all those guys on that list except for the number 5 one,
Right.
and so you're not going to go back to that. But I think obviously there are flaws with the rankings. Like, there are things that you try to keep that sports feel to it, but at the same time, it's just it's not always going to work. And so I think the fact that Taz is pointing this out, like, if you're going to do this ranking system, then why wouldn't my guys be in there? Because their record is as good as anyone else's. And so that's a really good point. And it, brings that aspect of, okay, it's us against AEW now. And I'm always for that. Like, us against the promotion, hey, unless it's Retribution, sorry. But I think for the most part, it just works. And it's just, with Taz, it's just so good, like you said. And Ricky Starks, listen, I know people don't want to watch AEW Dark every week now, which I hate that Steve Cook has gotten out of the chat, because ever since he handed off AEW Dark to me on 411, the show has gotten longer and longer to where it's almost pay-per-view length each week. But I know a lot of people don't want to watch it, but if you do, and you only want to catch a couple of things, anytime Ricky Stark's on the show, which he pretty much is on there every week now, whether he's wrestling, whether he's commentating, or doing both. Most of the time he's doing both. Like, just watch Ricky Starks' match. Like, most of them are less than 5 minutes, but he's just so good. Like, he is
He
just
just gets it.
fantastic. Like you said, he does. Like, he does all the little things. And that's what I talked about earlier with MJF. Like, Ricky Starks, I think even more so with MJF. Ricky Starks could be in there smiling. He could be taunting you. He could be laughing at you. Like, he could be laying on the ropes. And then 5 seconds later, he could be on the ground, like, punching your face as hard as he possibly can. And, like, he's so good. And so I hope this leads to something. You know, we had the tease for Taz is like, hey, we're going to be there and we're going to do something at Full Gear, whether it's Cody, you know, however it works out. I would love to see, like, Ricky Starks get more involved with that. Which, think about it too, Andy. If Darby Allin wins this title, Darby Allin versus Ricky Starks, sign me up, because they've been pushing that on Dark for weeks and weeks and weeks. And if they get back around to that, to where it's those two, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and definitely suggesting some possible involvement in that TNT title feud, calling out that whole Cody situation in particular in this promo. But we have wannabe Troutfishers back in the chat this week, finally agreeing with me for once, saying that he totally agrees. Get Ricky Starks in there, get Brian Cage in there. I'm all for it, and that leads us into a match that a lot of people were anticipating with not that much time to prepare for it. We have Young Bucks and Private Party in a match this week, subbing in for Shawn Spears versus Scorpio Sky, which was unfortunately canceled due to Scorpio Sky possibly having some COVID situation there. But what did you think of Young Bucks versus Private Party? It is always a joy to watch these two teams get in the ring together.
Well, like you said, it's a good wrestling match. Like, you know, you're going to get that any time these teams square off. Like, it's just going to happen. It's going to be a great match. But it's also like, I mean, I guess there was a little bit of backstory to it. Like, you had a little bit, just because we remember, like, what was it? I think the second Dynamite that those two had the match, and you know, you had Private. So I think it's always going to be a great match, but it's also another one, like, we knew that the situation, like, it was just kind of thrown together, and so you weren't really going to get that emotional probably investment just from this match, but you were going to get a lot of great moves, because that's what you got here. You just had the usual, you know, it's almost like these two teams could do this kind of match in their sleep. Like, they're just they work real well together. The chemistry's there, and, you know, I'm sure at some point, whether that's in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, like, you'll have more of an story layers that you could probably call back some of these matches they've had. But for now, this was just kind of one of those matches, I think, to get you to that tag team title match at Full Gear. And then, of course, the aftermath of this match, that was something else that obviously was probably the bigger point than the match itself.
Most definitely. Like, throughout this match, like you said, even though it was quickly booked, quickly thrown together, a lot of story elements in terms of Matt Jackson and his injured ankle really pushed that story element throughout this match. And it's obviously going to play a huge role in the storyline with FTR versus Young Bucks. But we had everything coming to a fever pitch after the match, after the Young Bucks pull off the victory. We had FTR coming in and attacking afterwards, threatening to possibly crush that ankle once again. But we had the save, first of all, by Hangman, and then, of all people, Kenny Omega filing in right afterwards. And we had a bit of awkward tension here in a situation that I don't think played out how anybody was expecting. Really different storytelling here. It really didn't give me what I expected, and I'm still a bit confused over the whole situation. I'm not sure where I stand on it yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, and look, we have people in the chat, and I want someone to try to explain this to me too, because maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought this was much different, like Kenny Omega wise, than what we've seen, obviously, the past several weeks. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. Like, because this is this cohesive unit we've known for so long, right? It's Kenny, it's Hangman, it's the Bucks. Like, we know the history, we know everything they've done together. And so I think, trying to think of what the thinking was here, you know, obviously you add just having Omega and Page in the same space together heading into this match, so you get that tension, like you said, that builds to the match, and so I understand why they did that. But it also felt like they're adding something else to this, though, to where it's okay. Hangman comes out to make the save, and then Kenny comes out. So is Kenny coming out just to basically say, I'm not going to be one-upped by this guy? These are my guys, and like I don't want him, and I wonder if that's the way they're going, because maybe I just didn't, like you said, maybe there's something that I didn't really maybe even understand, like, about what they were trying to go for here. But I do feel like it's something to where it's like Kenny was almost being a little bit obnoxious, but maybe it wasn't so visible, or in terms of like, okay, Hangman's coming out. Well, this guy's not their best friend. It's like I'm their friend, or like all this other stuff. So I don't know. Like, this was another one where it's maybe this FTR, Young Bucks feud, but I don't know exactly how, and maybe it's just that bigger elite type of thing that you're tying in here. But it felt a little bit of a different change of pace than what we've seen from Omega over the past couple weeks.
Right, and we definitely have to remember the situation between FTR and Hangman that eventually cost Hangman and Omega the titles. But still, kind of an awkward situation. There were a couple teases there with Hangman maybe holding on to the steel chair for a few seconds too long after the save, lurching behind Omega, possibly giving us a tease there. And then again, as we have Jonas in the chat saying, always running in with the whiskey in hand. At a certain point, that whiskey glass was empty. And I even called it out to you as we were watching the show. I go, is that a breakaway glass? Are we going to see Hangman crack it over Kenny's skull leading into this show? But no, Kenny diffused the situation with a quick fist bump. And even though it was awkward, we moved on to the commercial break. But once we came back, we had Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley facing off in the middle of the ring with a bit of a stipulation to this segment. They weren't allowed to get physical, or else the match would be canceled. And I don't know about you, but for two top-level performers like Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley, this segment fell a bit flat for me.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Yeah,
Look at this. I did not expect you to say that.
I know. I didn't expect myself to say it.
Well, that's all right. I thought it was great. I'm just going to be honest with you. I thought it was good. And the reason why is, and look, I'm not one to give professional wrestlers any advice, right? You're not paying attention to the guy that buys John Silver shirts pretty much as a hobby now. But at the same time, like, I just think that these two, there is a certain element of authenticity and realism to this that I am just all in for. Like, I'm all in anytime these two speak, and they're not just, when they do it by themselves, it's great. Like, when you have the individual promos, it's fine. But I think when you get them together, like, you feel that history between them. And it's because Eddie Kingston has done such a good job of, like, pulling up the exact history, explaining, like, what the deal is here. He's always saying, like, Mox left him and for the big leagues and the land of the sports entertainers and all this. But it goes back to what we said about Hangman. Eddie Kingston, he has to have the title. He has no other choice. Like, he needs this more than anything. And I think he's done such a good job of playing that up that this segment, even though it was a little bit different, I still thought it was great, because you feel that when you're watching him. Like, because what he says, it's not a wrestling promo. Like, and he's said this many times in all the interviews he's done. He's like, I'm not out there cutting a promo. I'm just out there talking as me, like as Eddie Kingston, as the guy who is literally, and he's right. Like, think of it. He's a wrestler in a wrestling company. Like, he needs the title more than anything. Like, that should be his goal, and that's what he said. Like, that's what he wants to do. So I just think Eddie Kingston, like, and we've talked about something, I guess, if you think about Moxley's challengers since he's had the title, could you not argue, like, this is probably, because of what Eddie Kingston has done on the mic these past several weeks, I feel like this has to be, like, one or two in terms of the top challengers that Moxley's had, because this has just felt so real, and it's felt like they are going to go out and absolutely destroy each other. And that's what I want, like, from a Jon Moxley match. Like, I want it to be just a complete physical, all-out brawl And I think they've done a good job at least building to that.
Right, and the thing is that type of intensity and that type of realism leading into this is what ended up making this whole situation fall flat for me a bit. So let me try to justify my words against Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley here. I was crazy about every promo that these two had leading up to this night. The intensity, the realism, I was with it. But then once we got to this physical face off, did it elevate it much? For me it didn't, because it started off at a fever pitch. It started off with the highest intensity that they could get. Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley started the segment with a yelling match between the two of them. Uh, where do you go from there? That level of intensity, it's difficult to maintain throughout a promo, and for me, it just felt like that they were retreading the same area that they were at the start of the promo. So it was just a bit disappointing for me, especially as the lead-in to the main event match between Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. I'm not sure if this promo between the two of them both being in the same room one-upped the promos that we saw in previous weeks. But that's just my opinion. Let us know in the chat, what do you guys think of this promo between Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley tonight? How are you guys feeling heading into the match at Full Gear, and who do you guys think is going to walk away from Full Gear with the title? Let us know in the chat, as well as like and subscribe. But that leads us into a very interesting video package from Pac. What did you think of this?
He's back. The bastard is back. And not only is he a bastard, but now he's just a complete maniac. Like, he's a psycho, and I love it. Like, but like, it's true, right? And that's the other thing. Like, he's been in isolation. Like, he's like a lot of people, right? Lockdowns and all this other stuff, like, throughout this pandemic. And it's like, this guy, he has to be losing his mind, because he is sitting there watching all of these guys on TV. Eddie Kingston, he's taking his boys, like, he's taking Penta, he's taking Phoenix. Eddie Kingston's getting the title shot. That could be him, right? But now he's just like, I'm sitting here like isolated, but you know what? Every day I've been doing 6,000 push-ups, and I've been eating, whatever. Like, I've been eating wood from the walls. Like, I don't
wood
know
and raw elk. Yeah.
This guy, yeah, like, I don't know what he's doing, but he's just, I mean, the guy is just ripped as ever. So he's like, I'm using this as motivation. It's almost like he's been in prison, right? Like, that's what it feels like for him. And so he's playing that up. So I can't wait till he comes back, because, like, he is one of those guys you forget about. And that's what, I don't mean that in a mean way, but, like, you forget that he has not been on TV for over 7 months.
Gravity
now.
forgot him too, so you can't be too hard on yourself.
Well, that's true. That is a very good point. So at least we're giving WWE credit for something, because Gravity did forget this guy. But I can't wait till he's actually back. And I know people have said, was this one of those things where you sort of redirect people's attention to where, oh, okay, well, he's still not here, he's still here and he's still stuck? Or does he show up on Saturday and get involved in something, which I don't know, like, what happens with him? Because I don't know when he comes back, but I tell you, if he comes back and it's him and Eddie Kingston, or it's him, basically being pissed off at Penta or Phoenix, it doesn't matter. Like, we're going to get something gold, I'm sure, whenever he does get back.
Well, with the way he was built and protected before the COVID era, before he left AEW for this 7 or 8 month stint, he could come back and be a main event player right off the bat. And for a performer like him, I would not have any issues with that. We're wondering what he did during this time in isolation. Did 100 push-ups a day, 1,000 sit-ups a day, ate wood out of the walls, ate some raw elk. But I think he also went to an online film school, because the way this little video package was shot, just very beautiful, might I add. So not only did Pac add a little insanity to the show, a little bit of aesthetic flair for Team Pac as well. Let us know in the comments what match you want to see Pac return at. I loved his couple matches with Kenny Omega. How about Pac versus a newly crowned champion Kenny Omega after Kenny Omega possibly wins this tournament and goes on to face Moxley. I don't know. I'm not a booker. That's not my job. But Cody, if you want to call me, I wouldn't turn down the money. But we have Jonas in the chat also hyping up next week's Dynamite with Lucha Bros facing off in the rematch.
Yes.
We'll get to that when we look into next week's show. But I had to stop the show just to insert that because I am really looking forward to that rematch. But that leads us into Nyla Rose versus Red Velvet and a little exhibition match before Nyla Rose faces off for the AEW Women's title. We've talked about time and time again how the AEW Women's division really maybe hasn't gotten the exposure that they need in order to grow and breathe into a group of formidable characters that we genuinely care about. We have a little bit more character flair now that Nyla Rose is teamed up with Vicky Guerrero. How did you see this match playing out?
Yeah, I mean, at least Red Velvet got on, I guess, Dynamite. That's a positive. Mm-hmm. So she's aligned with Brandy now, which I know for people who've watched, Dark and all that, she's now kind of her sidekick, I guess, and they had their tag team match on this week's edition of Dark, and I think they beat Layla Hirsch and Elena Black. I think that was the match. So it was nice to have Red Velvet, but like you said, it's just at this point with the women's division, I don't know. Like I just don't know what their intentions are, because we are going back to Shida versus Nyla, and just like before, I thought they had a good match last time they faced off. Like I thought it was one of the better matches on the show, to be honest with you, because I don't know that it's one that even got enough credit. But I just think at some point, I would love to see them start to have more of that. I don't even know what the word is, but like Vicky helps Nyla because Vicky's so good on the mic, and we saw that after this match, where she goes over and does all that with Shida, but I just think they need more of that. Like, they need more of those. Like, even if you bring in managers or something for some of these women, like, that's fine. Like, but just give people more of a story, give people more of a character than just putting them out there in matches, because I think they need more of that. Because here's my question. After Nyla versus Shida, where do you go next? Like, you have to go to Britt Baker,
you have to.
Right? Like, I feel like that's the only option. If Shida wins this match, which I would, like, I don't know. Like, we talk about if you're a betting man. Like, I would probably bet that Sheeta's going to retain here. I could be wrong, because otherwise, who do you put Nyla against? That's the real question. Like, right? Because I just don't think Nyla versus Britt Baker works. Like, and not just because they're both heels, but it's just, like, I don't really feel like that's much of a draw. But Britt Baker being the one to say that she ended Sheeta's long reign, I feel like that's the best way to go. But then, like, even from there, like, where do you go from there? And so I just wish they would take more time. And the thing is, you could do a 1-minute promo. You could do 30 seconds where you put Britt Baker on TV. You put Penelope Ford. You put some of these others on there, and just give them 1 minute to do some kind of character development. Doesn't matter what it is. Just, you're telling me you can't find 1 minute somewhere, like, to do more of this? Because think about it, Andy. Like, this was the only thing on the show. Like, this segment right here that lasted probably 5 to 7 minutes, I'd say. That's it. Like, that was the only build-up for your championship match on Saturday, right? So, I don't know. Like, it's lacking.
Most definitely. And we have wannabe trout fishers back in the chat saying that they felt the aftermath of the match was better than the match itself. And that goes to show that whenever you do integrate these heavier story elements into the women's division, people are eating it up and people are enjoying it. That's also been seen with Britt Baker's promos, with Britt Baker's run, and I echo your sentiment in saying that I don't see money in the Nyla versus Britt Baker situation. It would have to be Shida, just for the way Britt Baker has been handled. Her shtick wouldn't play off of Nyla very well. It would be taken as of course Nyla would play it straight, but still I don't see much entertainment there, much entertainment value there. But it remains to be seen what AEW is doing with their women's division, because you were talking about in regards to Miro earlier that you see it as kind of a holding pattern we've been in a holding pattern with this women's division for
Right.
months now. So I'm just waiting for something of substance to happen. And we have Jonas in the chat bringing up that they have the NWA Women's title as a secondary belt, and we had a NWA Women's Championship added to the card at Full Gear. Does the storylines that they've been building justify 2 belts at this point?
Well, see, and I was going to say, like, let me ask you this. Doesn't the NWA Women's title feel more important than the AEW Women's title right now? Like, think about, like, last week you had Serena D versus Layla Hirsch. Like, I of course, anyone who has listened to me ramble about Layla Hirsch, like, she's awesome. Like, I wish, like, if that's the thing, if Sheeta wins, you go to Sheeta and Britt Baker. If Baker beats Sheeta, bring in Layla Hirsch. Like, just have her come in and just kick, Baker and just kick her and kick her and kick her. Like, because I think, like, that's what you need. You need someone different. And I think they have her, like, and I keep saying, like, she's a female Kurt Angle, which is what people have said, because she has, like, that sort of, that background, like that just true technical, like, strong style. She's got all this.
Her offense is so clean.
It's great. And that's the thing is, but think about this. She's been on AEW for the past couple weeks now. But, like, it seems like there's no sense of urgency. Like, there's nothing to, like, knowing that WWE, and people have made jokes about, like, how WWE's using AEW Dark as, like, their scouting system now, because they've already, like, Ben Carter, is someone who's already over there, probably, at least according to the rumors. And so, like, you don't want to keep looting. Thunder Rosa, like, she's another one. Like, everybody talks about the Thunder Rosa rumors, and could she wind up in WWE and all this other stuff. So I just don't feel like there's any sense of urgency with the women's division. And I get you have a loaded men's roster. I get it. Like, you got a lot of them. They're really good, and you're very talented. But I just think they could do a little bit more with this women's division. And I just don't think they're doing enough because, you do have Serena D versus Allison Kay now on the buy-in, and I think, now with kind of where they go from there, I don't know. But I don't know, and that's the problem. It's like I don't know that they know. I think maybe that's the biggest part. Is I don't really necessarily know that they even know where they're going with this. It just feels like I don't want to compare this because this will be taken the wrong way. But like we remember back in WWE, like back in the day when the women would get their 3-minute segment or 4-minute segment, and that was it. This is not to that level because I think it's a much different era. It's a much different, and women's wrestling has come a long way. But at the same time, AEW Dark, AEW Dynamite, this next show that they're getting, I hope they find a way to put more focus on developing the women, not just from a wrestling standpoint, but make us care about who they are as characters. They've done that with Britt Baker. I don't really know if they've done that much with anyone.
Right, and they've shown time and time again the talent is there in the division, and we can say it 1,000 times, and I'm sure we've said it a couple dozen already over the course of this Dissecting Dynamite, last Dissecting Dynamite, as well as our conversation on the podcast. But it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time and effort, and that leads us into a hype package that the AEW production team seem to put a lot of effort in, and that is the build-up for Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page. An awesome video package pitching these two as if they're scorned lovers. Very funny, while also showing the very, very real emotion that we have heading into this match. And I don't think you or I need any more hype leading into this match, but somehow this package did it.
Yep, you don't know what you got until it's gone. What a song choice! Like that was perfect. That is just, I thought that was great. Like it did. It added in that. I don't want to say like goofy, but like it did. Like it added in sort of that element that just it makes you just laugh, and you're like, these two guys are just great. Like that's what you can't help but love them. Like you can't help but love both of these guys. And that's why I think this match is just built up so well because you're so invested in both of them. And that's what we talk about, like with the women's division and other stuff. You're just so invested in Kenny Omega. You're so invested in Hangman Page. And now you have, this love story, basically. Exactly. Like you said, it's like scorned lovers is what it feels like, to where these two are finally going to meet up. And, are they going to break up? Like, or is it going to be like this nasty thing? And it's just, I don't know. It's going to be great. But I thought this video package, that's what we said. Like, it felt like the Young Bucks thing when they came out. It's like everything just sort of felt I don't know. It felt like out of order, maybe out of sequence, like to what it
Mhm.
should have been. Maybe that's the best way I was thinking of it. Is it almost felt like things felt like they were out of order in terms of maybe how they went about starting with the promos, going to that, and then coming back to this package here. I don't know. Like maybe it just felt like maybe they could have even switched the order around on some of
Definitely,
those.
it's as if they had all the puzzle pieces there, just didn't have the
Yeah.
right fit. And if you guys want to hear Blake and I speak more about the Kenny versus Hangman match, make sure you listen to the 411
Yes.
on Wrestling podcast. It should be released. When are we planning on releasing that? Friday?
Yeah, it should. Let's see. We're gonna record tomorrow on Thursday. So actually, we may even try to just release it tomorrow evening. So if you want that, maybe tomorrow evening. If not, early Friday morning at the latest. But yeah, we'll have our full gear preview and predictions for every single match. So we're gonna put ourselves on the spot. We got to make picks for every single match. So yeah, send in your picks and all that
Yeah,
good
so make
stuff.
sure you like and subscribe to the 411 Mania YouTube channel so that you do not miss that. That leads us
Yep.
into the main event of the evening. We have the Dark Order here. We have John Silver, Colt Cabana, and 10 versus the Gun Club and Cody. And of course, Darby Allin sitting up in the rafters like he has been the past few weeks. And before we move into this main event, we had some fun little rumors going on with the way Darby Allen has been presented as of late. Some rumors and some speculation that'll probably end up really disappointing us. But why don't you give a rundown of what we were thinking throughout the show?
Well, if you've been on social media, like, or if you've read 411 over the past, I don't know, 5, 6 days or so, I can't remember exactly when the story came out, but people have started to run with a Sting thing. And it started with WWE, pulling his merchandise from WWE shop, and everyone talked about how it was probably like a contractual thing, to where maybe just WWE just simply it's not it's a contract thing to where they can't sell his stuff anymore, because either he's not under contract with him in any capacity or anything like that. And so naturally, you've got all this stuff where everybody's like, oh, well, what is that, AEW? Like, is he going to AEW? It's like this is it. Like, he is going to AEW. Like, he's going to win the world title on Wednesday. But of course, that didn't happen. But at the same time, you've seen all these different little teases with Darby Allin. We talked about it, Andy. You go back to, I guess, what was that, last week, where Darby's sitting up by himself, and then he did it on this show too. But for the first time, like, we kind of saw him, he's just kind of sitting up there, he's brooding. He's just sort of watching, as Sting used to do, and back in the day. And then last night on AEW Dark, you had the lights go out, you had Darby basically show up on the ramp. You had all these different mysterious type things that a lot of people would equate to Sting. Now you could equate that if you're reaching and just trying to find the connection there, but at
Just
the same time,
really reaching out there.
well, and that's the thing is, like, at the same time, I see a lot of people on social media that have really gotten, like, they have gone all in on this. Like, they think that this is happening. And my thing is, I always try to temper expectations because I do not want to think that Sting is going to be at this match. Now, look, let's think about this too. AEW, this is another thing. They've been, like, building up on these previews and everything like a surprise. Like, it seems like that's one of the things they've been building on, like, some of the promos. I don't know where these are airing, but I know I've seen people mention it on social media and stuff, to where they're sort of building up, like, either you don't know what could happen or like they're building some kind of surprise on this show. And so I don't know, like, that's something else. And so if you connect all the dots together, which as wrestling fans, we love to do that. Like, we love to just say, oh man, like, this guy's wearing black. That means either Sting's coming back, the NWO's coming back, like anything. Like, just give me a color, like, give me a wink, give me a something, like, raise your left eyebrow if, like, this guy's coming back or something. So that's my thing. Just don't get so excited about something because this isn't WWE, to where sometimes they don't follow through on some of the stuff and they tease it and they just don't follow through. But I'm not wanting to go there yet with Sting. I don't want to get too excited. Now, if he shows up, you're gonna be able to hear, like, I'm gonna sound like just I don't know, like a 5-year-old girl probably. Like, I'm gonna scream and it's just gonna be great. But I'm not willing to go there just yet.
And on top of that, the black and white imagery and all of the Darby Allin promos, in
Yep.
addition to the focus of this feud between he and Cody being placed on the face of TNT. And when I think of the face of TNT back in '99, back in 2000, I think of some black and white paint. Is all I'm saying. But nonetheless, we're leading into the main event. We had your boy John Silver. Dissecting Dynamite might as well sponsor John Silver at this point. Colt Cabana and Tin versus the Gun Club and Cody. What did you think of this main event? Quite a fun main event. Not the typical AEW main event, but uh-oh.
There he is, the shirt. Get your recruitment specialist shirt. John Silver, one of a kind. I feel like I should just put this over myself for this segment.
All right,
there we go.
Go ahead. Let us know your thoughts on John Silver. Let us know your thoughts on this match.
Let's talk about John Silver because he is just freaking jacked, baby. Like, he is just a jacked guy. This guy has just gotten, I mean, I can't even do this shirt justice because he is just on another level when it comes. You talk about doing push-ups. Pac could do 1,000 push-ups a day, 1,000,000 push-ups a day. He's not going to reach John Silver's level. I'm sorry. But look, I think we talked about, like, it was the very first question in the chat tonight, right? It was like, has being the elite ever done something like to this magnitude for anybody? Like, think about that. This guy has gone from just being another guy in the Dark Order to main eventing, Dynamite. His match gets with Orange Cassidy, by the way, like the guy that everyone loves. That match gets moved from the buy-in to the main card because people love him so much. And it's just, I mean, think about, like, his ascent. Like, this guy has just become on another level. It's just, I don't know, man. That's the thing about wrestling is what you love is when you see guys that just find a way to get themselves over. And, that's Brody Lee. And you and I are talking about this, Andy, on that AEW Unrestricted podcast, which if you listen to that, like, Brody Lee was just talking about how he doesn't, like, he struggles to keep it together when they record these Being the Elite segments, like, because Johnson and one of the things that really stood out, he was like, Stu Grayson, like, he never laughs. He's like, I don't know how the hell Stu Grayson, like, does not laugh during this, because he's like, I have to move behind the camera just so John Silver, and he was like, what was it? Oh my gosh, it was a couple weeks ago when John Silver's like milking, like, he's just, who was it? I don't even remember who it was, but somebody else, and it's just, like, think about that, though. And I will say this, like, people can knock AEW for certain things, and we've talked about the women's division, some of the other stuff they do, but when they let guys kind of be themselves, when they let them run with these personalities, it pays off. Like, it works. And you see that with John Silver, and it's not just me pumping him up every week, even though I'm sitting here with his shirt over, by the way, by the shirt. It's just, like, they let these guys run with their personalities, and that's why I enjoy this promotion so much. Is because I know that more often than not, they're not just going to say, "Oh, that guy's getting over," aka Zack Ryder. So we'll do a couple things, but we didn't get him over, so we're not going to put him in
not
that
in
position.
The books, not in the plans.
No,
yeah,
right. Exactly. So it's like you don't adjust to what your people want, and I think with him, everyone loves the guy. So put him in the main event. Give him this opportunity. And you could even argue, outside of Cody, like, he was the star of the main event on Dynamite, on the biggest television show each week for AEW. So it's not just me, playing my character and my love for John Silver. Like, this guy's just so good. And by the way, congratulations, Austin Gunn. A big moment for him. Billy, I know, was a proud father to have his son get the pin on the main event of Dynamite. So congratulations.
That's the thing. Not only a showcase for Cody, not only a showcase for our boy John, but a showcase for Austin Gunn. What do you think their rationale was putting Austin Gunn in this premier spot, this winning the main event for his team, and the lead-in to a pay-per-view that he has nothing to do with? Of course, we had Cody giving the impassioned promo after the match, calling out Darby, saying, "Stop lying to yourself. We'd be happy to have you as the face of TNT, but the thing is, you're just not the workhorse that I am," which we can get to when we get to that. But what did you think of Austin Gunn being the one with the spotlight on him at the end of this match?
Yeah, I feel like that was probably just a cool little nod, I think, for Billy, someone who does so much, I think, for AEW. And, he's kind of another one of those sort of unsung hero type of guys probably backstage because, he has all this experience, and I think when you have someone like that that just can do so many different things well, and he brings a lot to the table. I feel like that was probably something, and it does, like, it puts over that Nightmare family. Like, we brought these guys in. Well, let me show you why. Like, because they can win this match against the Dark Order, and I don't know. Like, you get him, of course, Lee Johnson, our guy Lee Johnson's now added to the mix for the Nightmare family, although he may be 0-15 in a singles record, but he's at least. I mean, I feel like now he's got to get a win, right, at some point. But maybe he'll get in the Austin gun spot at some point. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to have that. But I do feel like it's probably just one of those things where we want to put over the Gun Club because you talk about win-loss records, like their win-loss record is spectacular. And so maybe we've added them to the Nightmare family. We give them this opportunity. And I mean, right, Billy doesn't need the pin. Cody doesn't need the pin.
Why
so
not?
It's like, let's give Austin the pin, right? Why not?
Yeah,
So.
and like I said, we have that leading into a Cody promo calling out Darby Allin. And Darby Allin and Cody are no stranger to one another. He even outlined that in the promo. He had to wrestle Darby in order to convince the others to bring Darby in. We've seen this match a handful of times over AEW programming. So my question is, what's going to make them meeting again in the middle of the ring at Full Gear Special? We've talked about the potential intrigue with Sting. I'm not going to bet on that, but an odd feud to end the lead-in episode of Dynamite. But still, I'm anticipating the match just to see how they change things up. But that leads us into we have some awards to give out. Make sure you guys in the chat let us know who you think should win the awards that we're about to go through. The first one, of course, is the Wrestler of the Week. Blake, Dissecting Dynamite audience, who do you guys think this week's Wrestler of the Week was?
Well, look, we know I can't just pick John Silver every week. It wouldn't be fair. So I'm actually going to go with someone who was way back at the start of the show, and that's Sammy Guevara. Like, I think I was just so impressed, I think, with how that first match went. And like I said, I have a feeling it's just because he can play those different roles. And I think we saw that here. And it almost felt like the Matt thing you wish they could have saved, because it was like, maybe just save that for after the match or do it, in another segment, because like he had the people behind him. Like, the crowd was in love with Sammy during this match. And so, it almost felt like something you could have waited on, but I obviously don't know why they did it because they're building to the pay-per-view on Saturday. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Sammy. I thought he had he won the main event of AEW Dark this week, by the way, as well. Beat Lee Johnson to give Lee Johnson his 15th loss. But still, I thought Sammy was really impressive on this show.
I agree that Sammy was impressive, but rather than agreeing with you, I think I'm actually going to have to agree with Wannabe Trout Fishers in the chat. Even though he wasn't in a premier spot this week, I think MJF was my Wrestler of the Week. Yeah. He just added in another layer of intensity to that feud between himself and Jericho that I didn't foresee going into Full Gear. And I think in all of the builds that we saw tonight, that added the most intrigue to me into the matches that we're going to see. But not only what wrestler was the best wrestler of the week, what do you think the general highlight of the week was for you in this week's Dynamite Diamond of the Week?
I think we talked about how great that video package was for Kenny and Hangman. I think that would probably be it. Although I love the Moxley Kingston thing. Probably, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say that I'm going to put the Moxley Kingston thing ahead of that video package between Kenny and Hangman. The realism, I just think it's there. It's what I want from these two. And I just think they're going to go out and destroy each other. Like, I think the physicality we've seen with Moxley matches to this point, I think it goes to another level here. I think these two are going to try to just rip each other apart, and I'm all for it. So I'm going to go with that. I thought it was really good.
And for my Dynamite Diamond of the Week, even though I have to disagree with you when it comes to the Kingston Moxley promo, oh gosh, there was so much going on this week. I'd say I may have to go with that Hangman Omega package just with how well done it was. And And I was telling you at the start of the promo hype package, I was saying, does this match really need a hype package? I'm already hyped enough for it.
Yeah.
But they proved me wrong. So between that and Pac's return package, the AEW production team outdid themselves this week. But with a bit of good, there's always a bit of bad. What would you say the Dynamite dud of the week was for you?
Well, I mean, I think the women's like division, we can probably use that like
Mm-hmm.
most weeks. Like, and so rather than go to that, I think I'm gonna stay with the FTR Young Bucks thing. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, I just feel like there was nothing additional added on this show that made me care any more about this match than I did
Mm-hmm.
last week. Um, just to honestly, like, there was nothing additional added here that made me like it didn't have me any more invested. And again, that's not to say I don't think this is going to be a great match. I think it's going to be a fantastic wrestling match. But there was nothing this week in a week where I thought that they could have found a way to hook you a little bit more of that emotional side of it. I didn't get anything. So I'll give it to that because, like I said, I know it's kind of easy to maybe go to the women's division a lot just because of where it stands right now. But maybe just in the scope of knowing how big this tag team match is for most people, I'm not there yet with it. I don't know. Like, it just hasn't been built to the point to where I think it should
I'd
be.
unfortunately have to agree with you on that one. It just didn't really add much to the story. It didn't add much intrigue. Everything we got this week just further emphasized what we saw last week. It looks like the ankle is going to be really what the story hinges on. In addition to this stipulation that we have tacked onto the match, that for me, it confuses me, and the motivation that the Bucks have behind it, it confuses me more than it does intrigue me.
Yeah.
We have wannabe trout fishers in the chat saying that Miro was the dud, and he wants to see Rusev Day back in about.
Yes.
I'd be okay with that. And we have Jonas in the chat as well, giving his thoughts on his diamonds of the week. He's saying that he liked the Darby Allin promo video. Once again, AEW production team outdoing themselves. And then the interaction between Bunny and QT Marshall. Poor QT Marshall. Not much you can do there, poor fella. But yeah, I'd have to agree
Yeah.
with you. My dead of the week was just the lack of progress in that storyline for the tag titles. But that just about wraps us up. But before we get to the end, we of course have our rankings rundown. Not much shifting going on in the rankings this week. In the men's division,
Yeah.
we have Brian Cage staying at number 1 as touted by Taz. We have MJF remaining number 2, Lance Archer remaining number 3, Darby Allin moving up 1 spot from last week, and then we have Shawn Spears rounding out the top 5. Shawn Spears, unfortunately, couldn't prove his reasoning for being in that top 5 this week. Unfortunately, his storyline with Scorpio Sky is currently on hold with the whole COVID situation. But otherwise, how'd you see this men's division shifting around leading to Full Gear?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about the Taz thing, and I mean, I thought Taz made some great points about the rankings and pointing out that, sometimes maybe they're more convenient, right, for the EVPs. Maybe they're set up to kind of help them out. And so I like Taz going with this conspiracy theory thing and wondering why aren't my guys being put in there? So, yeah, you can look at these rankings. And that's what, like we said, I think at the start, AEW had a good idea for the rankings and like what they wanted to do and everything. But I think as you add more talent, it's like at some point, like we don't want some of these guys to lose, right? And it's like, well, we have to have a lot of these, like, we don't want Ricky Starks to lose matches. We don't want Brian Cage to lose matches, even if they're not in the title programs. We don't want Lance Archer to lose matches. We don't want, Brody Lee outside of his matches against Cody. Like, so I get it. And I think I like the fact they're trying to do this, just add this element, this realism to it. But at the same time, like we said, with the rankings, they shuffle around a bit, but, I don't know. Like, it's just, I feel like that's another thing. Like, they kind of have to figure out what they want to do long term with the rankings, and maybe just decide how they want to do it.
Definitely,
So,
and we had the women's division's rankings staying static from the previous week. No change there leading into the
no.
pay-per-view. But then we have the tag division. The only change there is Jurassic Express finally showing up in the tag division, showing up at number 5 in the rankings. I'm all right with that. But like you said, while we're in this holding pattern between the Bucks and FTR, the rest of the rankings in the tag division a bit null and void right now. They don't really. There's not much weight behind them, so we'll see if going forward, like you said, they'll be able to re-emphasize the ranking system that they have. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, this Saturday at AEW, at AEW Full Gear, we have quite a card. We have Serena Deeb versus Allison Kay, Orange Cassidy versus John Silver, Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara, Jericho versus MJF, Sheeta versus Nyla Rose, Omega versus Paige, Cody versus Darby Allin, FTR versus the Young Bucks, and Moxley versus Eddie Kingston in an I Quit match for the title. If you want to hear Blake and I's further thoughts on AEW Full Gear, make sure you give a listen to the upcoming episode of the 411 On Wrestling podcast. You can see that on Amazon. You can find that on Spotify and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. But other than that, I'd say that this Dissecting Dynamite has come to a close. Blake, what are your parting thoughts?
Well, I think, my parting thoughts are even though there's lots of counting going on, you don't need to count the votes to know who is the best choice for any position in a position of power. And that, of course, is, I think we know.
That's Mr. Johnny Hungy. That's Mr. John Silver. And if you agree, make sure you give this video a like. Make sure you subscribe to 411 Mania on YouTube. And make sure you have a wonderful, wonderful night. We'll see you at Full Gear, everybody.